Hey everybody, I'm Christina Feindel, the blogger behind acleanplate.com. My website features hundreds of allergen-free autoimmune protocol paleo recipes, as well as meal plans, practical advice to get started, and details of my personal experience using paleo to overcome a history of chronic health problems. This channel on YouTube is going to be an extension of that site. Eventually I hope to have cooking demos, how-tos, vlogs on various topics, and I'm also starting a hangout with other autoimmune bloggers and patients and practitioners and friends and family and stuff called the Autoimmune Connection, where we get together and we discuss various topics relating to life with autoimmune disease. I wanted to take this opportunity to share a little bit about my health journey so far. I was a sick, unhappy child. I had an idyllic childhood, but I remember being chronically depressed as far back as 7. I didn't start seeing doctors until I was about 12 because when puberty hit, so did joint pain and mood swings. I knew that no 12-year-old had a right to feel quite as bad as I was feeling. I was tentatively diagnosed with carpal tunnel syndrome, but I think this was after my doctors had kind of ruled out everything else, and I think they didn't really believe it. They just had to say something. For the most part, I think they thought I was trying to get out of school or get some attention, and they were just kind of fed up with my frequent visits. One of them actually asked me as I was leaving his office, have you ever considered that you might be crazy? You know, kind of the same way that a car salesman might ask if you'd ever considered a nice Porsche, you know? Like, it stuck with me, and from that moment on, I thought, maybe this is all in my head. Maybe I really will grow out of it, and you know, I should stop complaining, and I should hide it so people don't think I'm crazy. And so that's pretty much what I did for the next 10 years. I think now that if it had existed at the time, I'd have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia. But my doctors insisted that what I was going through was totally normal for a pubescent girl and that I would grow out of it as I got older. But I never did grow out of it. Things just got worse as I got older. By the time I started college, I had crippling abdominal pain, blinding migraines. I was no longer menstruating. I lost the use of my legs a few times. I was losing sensation in my hands and feet. I developed dyslexia, and I jumbled my words when I was speaking or thinking. I was nauseous all the time. I had vertigo, no appetite, no sex drive, and just no desire to go on living. I was systematically shedding my belongings and distancing myself from the people in my life. I was just preparing to not be around much longer. And it wasn't that I actively wanted to die or even that I planned to take my own life. I just hoped that I wouldn't wake up one day. Or that, you know, the car that cut me off at the intersection would be, you know, a second earlier next time and I would never know what hit me. Just stuff like that. I knew that I was extremely ill. And the fact that none of my doctors could figure out what was going on with me had me convinced that I was either utterly insane or just simply beyond hope. And then with graduation looming and, you know, the rest of my life about to begin, I needed answers fast. I didn't have time to wait and grow out of it. I couldn't work in my current state, and I didn't want to be a burden on my loved ones. I had no energy for socializing or dating or romance or any of the things 22-year-olds should be doing. So I set out to find those answers, and because most of my symptoms were neurological, I asked for an MRI of my brain. And my doctor, she was so nice. She'd been my family doctor for years and years since I was a kid, really, and but she didn't think there was anything wrong with me, you know, and she begrudgingly ordered the MRI. And then a couple of weeks later, her nurse phoned to tell me that I needed to see a neurologist because they had found something. And I had expected something horrible. I had expected to be dying. I thought it wasn't fair that someone could feel, you know, this bad and have this many problems and not be dying. So I had expected like a tumor or an aneurysm or just something, you know. But what they found is what looked like multiple sclerosis. And even though I had known for years that there was something wrong with me, and even though I had expected something horrible, it was still a huge shock to get that call in to see the MRI and the MRI report. think, you know, even though I'd expected the worst, deep down, I had still believed that my doctors were right, that it really was all in my head, that there was nothing wrong with me. You know, this was all normal growing up stuff, you know, hormone changes and growing pains and stuff like that. And I had in this scan of my MRI irrefutable proof that there really was something physiologically wrong with me. And it was, I mean, it was the moment I knew that I always would be sick. I had studied multiple sclerosis in college in psychology and physiology, and I had friends, or at least acquaintances, that had it. So I knew something about what to expect. I tried to hide the results from my mom because I didn't want her to worry. But I did divulge them to my then 19-year-old boyfriend, who I'm still with today. And he's handled this entire thing better than anyone his age had a right to at the time. Certainly better than anyone else in my life. And I'm so grateful for that. But it's surreal to think back on that moment where I knew that something really was wrong with me, and to see how far I've come since then. Because it wasn't the light at the end of the tunnel. It would be nice to say that the story ended there, that I got my diagnosis, I got treatment, and, you know, now I'm doing fine and I lived happily ever after. But that was really just the beginning. The neurologist I'd been referred me to an MS specialist who referred me to somebody else who referred me to somebody else. It was just chaos. They all agreed that it looked like MS, but because I hadn't had a classic attack yet, I had a lot of symptoms, but changes in my vision and my gait weren't among them. So they couldn't diagnose me with MS without a classic attack, and they certainly couldn't treat me for it either. So I was basically back to square one. I had an answer, but it wasn't the answer. So they all expected that eventually I would have a classic attack, and then they would treat me at that point. But in the meantime, they ran a whole slew of tests to try to get to the bottom of my other problems. And the only thing they found was positive anti-nuclear antibodies. And for me, this was the breadcrumb that led me 2 years later to a correct diagnosis. I did my own research on ANAs and deduced from them that I needed to investigate other antibodies like thyroid peroxidase. When those came back high, my doctors again informed me that there was nothing they could do because my thyroid function hadn't yet declined enough to warrant treatment. And when my IgA antibodies came back positive for a gluten allergy, but my colonoscopy showed no intestinal damage, my doctors again informed me that there was nothing they could do because it was very unlikely that I had celiac disease, and they didn't even recommend that I avoid gluten at all. This is kind of the defining characteristic of how modern medicine treats autoimmune patients. They don't, they'll just tell you that statistically it's far more likely that you're stressed out or hormonal or depressed or, you know, just something like that, until you're so far gone that they can't ignore it anymore. So a new chapter in my life began when I moved to Austin, and I had to find a new neurologist to kind of oversee my supposed MS. And it was a stroke of luck that he was well versed in the merits of a grain-free diet for brain health, and he concurred with my previous doctors that I didn't really have a clinical case of MS. It looked like MS, but it didn't sound like MS. The second he saw my positive IgA antibody for gluten, he said, "I bet you have there's this thing called gluten ataxia. It's a neurological degenerative neurological condition that presents in many celiac patients. And, you know, as long as you avoid gluten and grains and stuff, you may never need to come back again. You'll probably be fine." And it was a bit of a gamble. You know, he didn't put it on paper. He didn't want to diagnose me with gluten ataxia or celiac disease based on one positive blood test. You know, you still do need a positive biopsy of your intestine to be officially diagnosed with celiac disease. But we both agreed that it sounded like a really good fit. And sure enough, I went grain-free, and my neurological problems pretty much vanished. I haven't had to go back. I never saw him again after that first appointment. And it was a miracle, really. I was just amazed that my doctors hadn't found this sooner, or that nobody else had known about it. And by this time, my thyroid function, I had been getting it tested every 6 months or so, just waiting for that moment where it would finally be declined enough to be treatable. And by this time, of course, that had happened. My numbers were rock bottom, and my new thyroid guy in Austin confirmed that I had Hashimoto's disease, which I had known all along. I had the positive antibody test, but now they could finally, they were finally willing to treat it. So that was about 2 years ago, and by that time I had seen more than 18 doctors over the course of 10 years. I'd been on dozens of medications, from painkillers and beta blockers to antidepressants. Most of them didn't help at all. Some of them made things a lot worse. And I'd been told that it was all in my head, that I just needed to gain some weight, or that I needed to de-stress, or give up vegetarianism, or take up vegetarianism, all kinds of things. And throughout it all, it had been made abundantly clear to me that if I wanted answers, if I wanted to feel well enough to make something of this life that I was on the verge of throwing away, I'd have to do it myself. I'm the one that requested the test that led to my diagnosis, against my doctor's inclinations. I found the autoimmune protocol, I overhauled my lifestyle, and I continue to troubleshoot my own problems. They're fewer and further between than they used to be, but they're still there. Good health comes and goes, and certainly when you're stressed, or not eating as well as you should be, or not exercising as much as you should be, things do happen. And I think now I'm certainly healthier than I have ever been in my life, and probably healthier than a lot of my friends and family, even people who don't have autoimmune disease. So that's saying something, I think. And I nowadays, about 2 months ago, I stumbled upon a paleo-friendly DO here in Austin who has been a godsend. Up until that point, I had pretty much just been treating myself and ordering my own tests and stuff. And within 5 minutes of meeting her, I walked into the room and she mentioned, I recommend doing the Whole30. And I was like, oh, been there, done that, great. And drinking bone broth, oh yeah. And she asked if I wanted to be tested for MTHFR, which I didn't even have to bring up. It was just, it was a blessing, and it was a huge relief to finally have someone that not only knew about paleo but was on board with me, and knew about all of these potential complications for autoimmune disease and stuff. So it's just such a huge relief, and I'm so lucky I found her. I had no inkling she would be that good when I walked in, and I was so nervous the day of the appointment. I thought, if this doesn't work out, what am I going to do? I just want someone that knows what they're doing and knows how to handle all my problems, because I don't want to do it myself. I don't want to spend all my time and energy, researching and troubleshooting and spending all my money on tests and treatments and stuff that aren't covered by my doctors, or that my current doctors won't approve. I do feel like, I'm, as much as there are always going to be problems, and there's, it may seem like it's one thing after another, or, just as things are getting good, something comes along, you get the flu, and then you're back at square one and you feel awful, or, it is a constant, it requires diligence. I have to go to bed at 10 p.m. every night. If I don't, then I don't sleep for 3 weeks, or, I get sick, or, I have to eat right, and if I don't, then I feel the consequences of that too. It's not something you can cure, in that you never have to worry about it again. But I do feel cured in the sense that I don't have any symptoms as long as I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Kind of like you don't have poison ivy symptoms as long as you're not exposing yourself to poison ivy. So, so I'm in a good place now, and I'm really honored and privileged to be able to be in a position now, as a blogger and as assistant to Sarah Ballantyne, the paleo mom, to be able to share this experience with so many of you going through the same thing, and hopefully help you come through it a little bit faster and more cleanly than I myself did, and hopefully dig you out of some of those dark places that I was once in. It's incredible to be able to do this for a living now, and it's such a blessing that everything I went through has brought me here to this wonderful place. It's given me good health. I'm happily living my life with with that boyfriend that supported me through my illness in high school and college. And I've got a great boss, I've got great friends, and great health. So it's there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you will make it through the woods, and all those other good metaphors. So on that note, I'm going to sign off. Thank you for watching and dropping by. I hope you'll share your stories in the comments below, or feel free to reach out to me at acleanplate.com or any of my attendant social media pages. You can find the links in my profile below. I hope you're well, and I hope I'll be seeing you again soon. Bye.